Hello, it is me, Jen, and today we are talking about a character. And I know there's a lot of um, content out there about main character energy and writing a new story, but I really want to dive into it from like our elementary school self and kind of evolve from there. I want to talk a little bit about structure of a story and how yours and the versions that you have of yours are affecting your life and how you can use that to your advantage moving forward. And I'm going to do it in a way that's really simple to understand and applicable, and that I've actually practiced and still practice to this day. I'm practicing it right now as we speak. First of all, if you remember back in elementary school and you talked about a story, the teacher would tell you, you have to have a who, what, when, where, why. Okay? And so you would have this story and you'd be telling, well, who's in the story, the characters, where are they, what are they doing, the plot, the setting is where are they, when can be a little bit of setting as well. Why are they doing it? What's the theme? What's the moral of the story? What is, why is this happening? And I used to really enjoy my creative writing classes, and I still enjoy writing very much. But then if you take that and you have this story of yours that you're living out and have lived out and will live out, you're just kind of in this story loop that you're living in, and you have these versions of your story. Now, in Rory Vaden's book, Take the Stairs, he talks about the version that you tell other people. So what do you say when you're like, oh my gosh, this happened and that happened and this person's like this, blah, blah, blah. So you have that version that you're telling other people. You have the version that you tell yourself, which could paint you out to be the hero or it could paint you out to be the villain. I know in my own life, there was a season where I really was hard on myself internally. My self-talk and even externally, to the point where I got called out on this so many times about negatively talking about myself. And I actually worked with Melissa Catherine Farley on correcting that. And it was such a blessing. And I'll get into some details on things that we worked on together to remedy that, if that's something that you're suffering from, because I know what that's like. I know that it's difficult, and sometimes it's like, how do you just switch that off? I'll get into that in this video too. So again, the three versions are the version you tell your people, the version you tell tell yourself, the version you tell other people, and then there's the facts. This is just what's really going down. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable. Sometimes sort of like getting into the nitty-gritty and admitting where you might have something that's happening in your life that you don't like and you don't prefer and you don't really want to look at it and you don't really want to deal with it, but it's there. And I know there's a lot in terms of people saying things about what's real, what's not real, and I'm not really delving into that. I understand that there are narratives creating a lot of that, and a lot of what we experience is based on what we're telling ourselves, and I'll touch on that as well, but this is not the video to dive deep into that subject. But I want to talk a little bit about the character in your story, which is you. A lot of times we want the character to change, and we think that that means putting on a new outfit, or it means, oh, if I just lost 20 pounds, or if I, moved somewhere or made a lot of money, got a new job, those kinds of things. If you watch a movie, and we all have, I think, or a TV show, or even read a book, we know that the characters that we fall in love with or can't stand or whatever, it's not their outfit. It's not how much they weigh. It's the way that they show up. It's the who that they are. And I want to give you a little example today I was driving to work and I saw this woman jogging, and she had, like, I want to say like an outfit that I would imagine a volleyball player would wear. Her hair was tied back in a bun really tight, and she was running really fast. She had one of those armbands on with the, like, where it holds your phone. She had some earbuds in, and her musculature was that of someone who is trained. And we all say that we don't judge, but our minds like to put together a context and a story so that we can make sense of chaos. If we just didn't know anything and we didn't put anything together, I don't know what we would be doing, but it would be probably weird. And sometimes it is weird because of what we are telling ourselves about this. Because I have no idea. Maybe she's undisciplined. But I mean, sometimes we look at things as humans and we understand that it requires something of a character, and we love this. We love this. We've been doing this since the ancient times, when people were sharing stories with other people, including characters in those stories, to help convey a message that someone would remember. In the Bible, Jesus did it. In all kinds of ancient writings, people are trying to express to younger generations, to the people around them, things that they've experienced using characters so that we can make sense of all of this and somehow make a correlation and go, oh yeah, that's what we're talking about. Because again, we're trying to bring order from a bunch of chaos, and it would be very difficult to function like if you were driving down the road and there were no rules, there were no guidelines for how we were driving, and it was just chaotic and you got to choose whatever. It's that balance, and it's what I love about the yin yang symbol in I think it's Taoism. And I just love that interchange of the order and the chaos, and that they both and I read about that symbol, and that it is a both and instead of an either or. And the either or is a very Western concept. It's very like, you're either good or you're bad, you're smart or you're not, like there's this very dichotomy type of situation where that's the both and they exist at the same time, right? We're not just this or that. We're kind of like waving back and forth between the two at any given time. Sometimes we're the hero in the story, sometimes we're the protagonist in the story, or the antagonist, or like whatever. We're the opposite. We're the hero, and then we're the villain. We're the hero and the villain, and we just kind of like bounce back and forth between the two at any given moment. And we feel that, we know that, we wish that we were always acting heroic. Wish we were always making the great decisions. And sometimes what makes life beautiful is that we're not, in those moments, because we get to experience that contrast. And in that contrast is where you get to appreciate and you get to develop and learn and grow as humans, and then help other humans do the same. But anyway, I was thinking about when and I use the Bible only because that was a big, giant part of my life, a part of my story for a long period of time, where I was in a very religiously steeped set of circumstances. And I've since kind of like backed off of the formality of that, and I've embraced more of the, I want to say, like, concepts. And again, this video is not about that. But in that time period, one thing I did learn was about the Trinity. And I think this concept spans a lot of religions and a lot of belief systems that exist, where you have this creator, source, nature thing that's just, this is, okay, it just is. And then you have this spirit, or this inspiration, we call it. You're inspired to do something. You have a question in science, like, I'm questioning, I have this thought and this theory, and I'm inspired to figure that out and solve this, okay? And then in more Christian vernacular, it would be more like you're inspired by the Holy Spirit, or, whatever religion or belief system that you've sort of acquired through your story and your set of circumstances, your setting that your character has developed in. And sometimes that can be or feel very accidental, but sometimes it can feel like it's very on purpose. And who knows, it's probably a combination of all of those things, but nonetheless, they're part of our story. They're part of the fabric of us, and we get to use them however we will. For a long time, I had some wounding inside of that, and I think a lot of people have probably experienced that. And the character that is me pulled very far away from the structure of that and really had to take a step back and heal. So that's, again, part of the story. And the third part of that trinity would be the character or the persona that is developed along the way. So you've got, in Christianity, they'd call it God in three persons, Blessed Trinity. That would be God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, which could translate into like source or nature, and spirit or inspiration, and then son, which would be man, and could be persona. Okay, so this character that you're seeing, this person you're embodying right now, walking through your story, walking out life, okay, all in one thing. Because we all know, like I've said before in videos, when someone passes away, we're not like, oh my gosh, there went their outfit, there went their, weight, there went their bank account. It's like the who that they were in your story. The essence, the spirit, the person beyond the shell and the outfit. It's not, again, when you're watching a movie and you're falling in love with a character, it isn't necessarily their looks and their voice and their weight and all of that you are drawn to. It is their character. So when you are building a character, and I found this out back in, I want to say 2010, and it all started with this obsession that I had, born out of a wound, with my weight. Okay, an obsession. And maybe you can relate to this. I was wounded and felt abandoned, and my character created a story that was, if I was perfect, if I did all the things, if I was attractive, I would never be abandoned again. And so I set out on this quest to be all everything, and wore myself to an absolute frazzle doing it physically, mentally, everything. And it didn't even work. So, that's one aspect of my story as well. And I will, over 30 years of journaling, again, that I'm going to bring into here, and all the lessons I've learned along the way from just sitting with myself and learning about my story. And I'm hoping to inspire people to do the same, to sit with themselves and get to know themselves, so that you can not just be part of someone's story, but start to create one that's meaningful to you and that honors all aspects of you, even the parts that feel shameful, that feel like a failure, that feel whatever, that you would associate as negative, and just galvanize it and turn it into something beautiful and something gold. And I think we all have those things. I remember in my journal, I wrote this because I used to write down all the cute things that my kids said. And my son, when he was really young, he's like, I know why we have to learn things that are really hard. And I said, why? And he goes, so we can teach other people. And I'm like, that is the sweetest thing, coming from like a 5-year-old child, understanding that. And I believe that's true, because you have stuff in you, in this neat, awesome amalgamation of things that no one else has, this unique combination of DNA, of life experiences, of settings and circumstances and peaks and valleys that isn't duplicated. And so when people go to ChatGPT for advice, I mean, I think it's a great tool, a master using a tool, not a tool. You're not the tool and it's your master. Like, no, it should be the reverse. It should be helping you gather stuff or whatever, but not giving you advice. That should be coming from you, and then you should be implementing advice using it. That's just a complete sidebar. But this is where if you sit with yourself long enough, which could just be 5 minutes a day, you can radically change this character. So when I was going through all of this, like, I need to be perfect in order to not be abandoned story, I had this epiphany and this moment where I was like, you know what? The reason that I'm having all of this difficulty with my weight, with my body, with all of this is the character that I'm being. It's not my weight. That's not the issue here. It's the character. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And I remember it, like, I laughed so hard when that happened, and I'm like thinking about my childhood self that was so joyful and loved to feel the cold water on her hands and loved to walk the balance beam. And I walked down my hallway like I was walking down a balance beam, and I just had this joy bubbling over me because it was like, I don't have to work so hard to build this thing and do all of this, because really what matters to me is the character that I'm building. And at that particular time, I needed some discipline. And I just started small and started building habits and slowly developed really good discipline. So I'm a pretty disciplined person. And then developed different attributes along the way. And I'm still doing that, as we all will, because if you were to do all of it all at once, man, you'd be overwhelmed. So we just do things one step at a time. But again, we're judging and we're creating stories to make sense out of it all. And also from my time in the religious world, there was a thing that said all things are held together by the power of his word. And I remember during that time period, I looked at that a lot differently than I look at it now. And but one thing that also stood out regarding our words and the things that we're saying and the stories that we're telling is that the word Adam means speaking spirit. And so you are this inspiration. You are this like nature thing that just showed up. Like, that does have some randomness to it. It feels like at times, but it's like you're here, right? And then you also have this lived out experience, this very stepping stone existence where you're just doing the things too. And the real, that's what feels very real to us most of the time. So I love that the thought of the word Adam being a speaking spirit, and that's what we all are. We're speaking inspiration to people, and we're inspiring, and we see someone running down the road and we're inspired by them. We see an Olympic athlete and we're inspired by them. And the same thing goes in reverse, where sometimes we're inspired to not be like someone too. So and that's just kind of this flow that's happening in and through everyone. And that's why it's so awesome to be a part of what I hope ends up being a very amazing movement in people to really, really get in touch with themselves and not be glued to something that is going to force them into a story that they have no part in writing. And I'm just very, very passionate about this. Moving on. But when actors are playing a role in a story, they are rehearsing. They are getting into costume. They are imagining what it's like. Sometimes they go visit the setting. You know, like if they're playing someone from this area and they want to pick up on how they live, they might go visit the actual place, and they might imagine what it's like and think about that person. And so when you're building this character in how you're going to live out the next act in your movie that is your life, who is this person? Not just what do they dress like, how many pounds do they weigh, are they ripped, do they have $1 million, do they drive a Ferrari? That can be part of it, sure. I mean, might as well have fun. But who are they and why? Why? What is the moral of the story? What is important to you? Why do you do what you do? If you decide that you're going to do something and create this character and they're going to live out the next act and they've lived these acts prior, write it out. And I've been reading this book called The Science of Storytelling, and it is by Will Storr, Storr. It's a really, really good book about storytelling. And in it, he does talk about the more traditional sense of stories, how there's Act 1, this is me and it's not working. Act 2, is there another way? And you could use these as journal prompts if you want. This is on page 194 of The Science of Storytelling. I will repeat. Act 1, this is me and it's not working. The protagonist's theory of control is established. Unexpected change strikes. The ignition point draws them into a new psychological world. Act 2, is there another way? The old theory of control is tested by the plot and it begins breaking down. There's rising emotions of excitement, tension or thrill as a new way forward is sensed, learned, and actively experimented with. Act 3, there is, I have transformed. Grim tension grips as the plot fights back. The protagonist counterattacks using their new strategy. In doing so, they transform in a way that feels profound and irreversible. But then the plot strikes again with unprecedented power. Act 4, but can I handle this pain of change? Chaos spirals the protagonist's lowest, darkest point. As the plot attack becomes relentless, our hero begins to question the wisdom of their decision to change. We've all been there. But the plot won't leave them alone. We realize they'll soon have to decide, who are they going to be? Act 5, who am I going to be? Tension builds at the approach of the final battle. A peak moment of ecstasy accompanies the protagonist, finally achieving complete control over the plot. The chaos is vanquished and the dramatic question is answered definitively. They're going to be someone new, someone better. And I like that in the next few pages, he kind of outlines alternative models of storytelling that are going on. And sometimes it's not that dramatic, and kind of movies that are a little bit too predictable kind of can be cringe. And we don't really like that because we know better because we've lived. And that's another thing when I think about ChatGPT and like going to them to get advice about everything. It's like, yeah, you've gathered all the information, but if you had a brain surgeon who said, I have all the information, I've read all the books, and I know people who've done brain surgery, sign me up. I would want to know that they actually put it into practice. They actually practiced medicine, not just read about it, not just gathered all the information, but did a few surgeries. You know, like, I mean, you got to road test your knowledge. But anyway, there's a part in here where he talks about a different thing where it says that there's a story of Travis, and I'll just read it. Eventually we discover why his marriage falls apart. His jealousy and paranoia leads to controlling behavior. They grow apart. He becomes abusive. But despite his dark history, they still love each other. Will the family be reunited? The film shows Travis on the phone to Jane, I'm guessing is his wife, giving the details of the hotel room, which he and her long-lost boy are staying. And then they embrace, but where is he? And the closing scene shows him driving into the sunset alone in tears. And this quiet but extremely effective ending isn't prefigured by any explosive final battle that results in his decision to walk away from all that he loves. There's no shouting, there's no thrown furniture, chases through airports, bitter I love yous, or torturous to be or not to be indecision. There's simply the dramatic question being answered conclusively. Who is this flawed character? After all his mistakes and trials, who did Travis decide to become? Someone who had the self-knowledge to admit he could never be the husband and father he had to be, but who nevertheless had the selfless courage to sacrifice his own wants over his family's needs. He was, after all, a good man. Travis's final battle might have lacked external fireworks, but in the second subconscious realm of the story, he'd been fighting dragons. The psychologist and story theorist Professor Jordan Peterson talks of the mythic trope in which a hero makes final battle with a dragon that's hoarding treasure. You confront it in order to get what it has to offer you. The probability is that it's going to be intensely dangerous and push you right to the limit. But you don't get the gold without the dragon. That's a very, very strange idea, but it seems to be accurate. That gold is your reward for accepting the fight of your life, but you only get it if you answer the story's dramatic question correctly. I'm going to be someone better. And that can be a slow process or a fast process. And I know for me, I've been so comfortable with having this very slow, methodical process of little incremental changes. And I am pushing my character, Jen, to accelerate that. And so for the month of April, I created something that I was going to call Anchored April, and it still is being anchored because I do need some rooting and grounding, but I feel like any character with their salt is going to come with a bag of tools, and I'm going to have my anchor points along the way, but then I'm going to set sail and go for it, and then I'll anchor again. And so goes life. But I'm going to link down below for free this little April accelerator logging tool, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it a challenge, if you want to call it a lab report, if you want to call it a tracker, whatever floats your boat, so to speak. But there are habits along one side and then the days of the week where you can just check off. I did one habit for my mind, one for my body, one for my environment, and one for my spirit. And I'm just going to write down my celebrations at the end of the month, how many days I completed the habits that are supporting this character I'm creating, and then the insights I'm going to use for the next month moving forward. And I just like having tools like this to help me go, okay, this person that I want to be does these kinds of things. I never use these tools as a scorecard or as a good, bad, pass, fail type of situation. I only use it as data because I treat it like a big old experiment. It's like, okay, how can I, it's just going to lead to a question, right? It's like, okay, I did this so many days in a row, or I did this usually on Sundays, or I did this usually at night and it worked out, or I did this and this thing at the same time. It's finding out about yourself. It's figuring out, because you're different. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you can't just say, okay, this person's doing all of this stuff, and so if I just do everything that they do, I'm going to be just like them, because you're different than them. And that's why those programs, while they're helpful, I've used a lot of them. And I've taken away the parts that really serve me and that have stuck and that I love. And then there's other parts maybe I've circled back to 10 years later and I've built on those. But this is a way for you to connect with you and decide for yourself how you want to live out. What things feel good to you and feel doable to you, or stretch yourself and say, what am I made of? If your character needs to, and only you know that. I don't know that. Only you know that, what you are willing to do and able to do in this moment. You probably don't really know what you're able to do. None of us do. I've met and run into so many people, including myself, who have this, we have this paradigm of the story that we're living, and that's all we know. We don't know what we don't know because we haven't done it yet. And that's why when we set out to do something different and new, it feels scary and terrifying. And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. And as soon as you embark out, it's like you're met by the big monster and you're like, oh, I don't want to do the monster. And you run away or you fight it or do whatever. And you learn some things about yourself throughout the process. It is a very hilly process. It is not just this linear path where it's like I just do things like a robot and I get this result XYZ. That just, I haven't seen that happen in my life, at least. Maybe you have. It can. I know that it can, but I just give this as encouragement to you that you are writing a beautiful, beautiful story. You have written a beautiful, beautiful story. And no matter what the pieces and parts of it look like up to now, doesn't matter. Because trust me, after reading 30 years of journals, yeah, I can look back at it now and see where it makes sense. But during the process, did it feel good? No. Would I say, let me do that again? No, I would not. And would I want to learn these lessons all over again? Probably not. And do I feel like they took too long? I sure do. But looking back now, I can say that there's a lot of gold. There's a lot of gold in there. It doesn't always feel like it, but you just have to keep connecting with yourself, deciding who it is you want to be. How do you want the next act to go? And going for it. And on the part of, when you go out there and you go for the dragon and you decide, am I going to be the one that fights the dragon or not? There's a book by Caroline Leaf. And just so you know that, don't feel bad when you feel like you get to the scary dragon and you want to back off. Some of it is literally your brain. Dr. Caroline Leaf has a book called Who Switched Off My Brain. It's an interesting book. It's very similar to Joe Dispenza, but it has some spiritual elements to it. And it talks about how your brain literally has these like highways that are getting formed. And we all know it because we get up and we do the same exact thing every day without thinking about it. We don't have to tell ourselves, it's time to get your clothes on. Or if you're going to go get in your car, you're not going, I'm going to go get my keys. I'm going to go out that door. I'm going to walk to the car. You're not saying all that. That's happening because you've already developed that pattern. When you first started driving, you had to remember a lot of things. But then once you actually began driving and you did it over and over, how many times have you driven down the road and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I even get here? Like I've just been driving around the road. That's terrifying. I don't even know how I got here. That's because we've got this super highway thing going on physically in your brain structure. And you can do the same thing, creating habits that are good as you have, creating habits that aren't serving you so well. It takes some practice. It feels like the scary monster. So just remember that as the director of the play, you get to tell the character, okay, you were amazing in that last scene, in that last act. I've got to tell you, in this act, we're doing something totally different, and I need you to do this. So you can take a step back and rewrite your scene each day. You can be like, oh, my character, Jen, today she got frustrated and she chose to do this and that. You could even write in your journal like that. Today she chose to be angry and upset, and she said some things she wished she wouldn't have. And so today she's recommitting to being more forgiving and kind, or however, like if that's the attribute you want to create, and just keep working on it and just enjoying the process. And then, again, if you want to take this to the next level, make sure that you're getting your character into situations that stretch them. Just like the actors, where they're going into situations and into places to really get a feel for how that character is. If you imagine yourself as this athletic person, go into the gym. You don't have to work out. Walk in the gym and walk out. If you're scared, just keep walking in and walking out. And just tell yourself, I'm going to go and I'm going to stand on the treadmill for 5 minutes and walk out. If that's just what gets you there. And I want to share just one last thing that's really kind of funny, because about big scary dragons. I was out on my walk yesterday, and this is just so random, but I saw this dirty diaper in the road not far from my house. And it occurred to me, I should pick up that dirty diaper because I want to be that kind of person. I want to be the kind of person who just doesn't have part of that. And I'm like, I'm going to, I walked right past it and I felt really bad about it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to pick up the diaper today. And I did. And I put it in the trash. Oh, I was creeped out. It was a big scary dragon of the day. It's not always the big goal. It's not always running the half marathon, starting the business, building the house, going on the vacation, doing all of the things, moving across the country. It's not always that. Sometimes it's picking up a dirty diaper because it's out of character. I'm not the girl who's going to face the dirty diaper on the road. I was like, But I thought, you know what? I can do scary, nasty, hard things. I've done them before. And I'm going to do one today. So just challenge yourself. And again, it doesn't have to be that you're fighting a full-size dragon. Sometimes it's just fighting a diaper. But I say that because I really want you to be moving to setting up something for yourself that feels good and exciting again. We're in a world right now that the setting can feel a little bit daunting. It can feel a little frightening and chaotic. And listen, I don't know how much you're going to do about all of that, but I do know that you have more agency than you think in your life. And it may start with something really small, like picking up a dirty diaper outside or taking a walk or walking into the gym. But know that you're building a character, and that character is going to show up. And who is it going to be when you're older, when you're passing on your lessons to someone? What are those lessons going to be? Are they going to look at your life and be inspired in the way that they say, yeah, man, I want to be like that? Or are they going to be like, no matter what, as long as I'm not like that? I know I've got a mixed bag for the different people in my life. I'm sure there are those who are like, and there are those that are like, yeah, I do want to be like that. And I've had a lot of people, thankfully, say that they do. They're like, I wish I could be more like you and be brave and be this. And I don't always feel so brave. So I just want to share that thing from a place of vulnerability, that it's not like I have it all together, but I have lived out a lot of life. I have been the practicer of these things, not just the reader. I haven't just gathered a bunch of information. I've lived it out and I've practiced it, and I've sat there and wrestled it down and worked through it. And I would love to be a part of your journey as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it was rambly. Again, down below, I'm going to have my Accelerator April form, tracker, whatever you want to call it, and it's free to download. So just follow the link. And in the meantime, live an awesome character and make the next act the best act.